Hello, everyone. Glad to see my friends are joining. Hope everyone is well today. I know that many of you are finding some solace in being finished with the tax season. So I'm glad that you're here because we are not going to talk about tax at all today. We are going to talk about apps and apps advisory services. So welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a second. As you can see, it's just me today. So the parents left me in charge. So normally Gary is here to introduce the webinar. And as part of the team and trusted member, they have left me to run this webinar today. So be patient with me if I'm looking over inside of the Q&A and a little slower than normal. But for those of you who come to webinars with me, I love the chat interaction. It helps me to know, like, where do you want to know more? Where do you feel confident? And I can move on. So very interactive. So feel free to post in chat and I will get to those questions and comments. Actually, I think the chat might be disabled. I think that it's going to be the Q&A that you're going to use. Ramona, you're asking about handouts to print. At the end of the webinar, I will get you a copy of the materials. And then the other thing I will do is also say that the handouts will be available as well as this recording later this week or early next week. I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is, but there will be a recording that will be shared. All right, so without further delay, I will go ahead and make sure that everybody knows that we're going to be talking about apps and apps advisory services and reoccurring income opportunities. So this is an area that our firm offers this type of service. So I'm going to be speaking from experience, and I'm going to be sharing with you firsthand what have we learned along the way. What have we determined was a bad idea, and so we pivoted away from that, and then also what have we found in the way of revenue and opportunities whenever it comes to apps and apps advisory. So there will be a virtual event coming very soon. So May 23rd and 24th, we will have a 2-day event, and it's going to be future forward. There's 10 different speakers. Some of those speakers are my favorite individuals. And then there's going to be 8 sessions. So I get the opportunity to co-present one of those sessions with my dear friend Esther. So I'm excited about that. We're going to be talking about really the future of tech and what are we seeing. So that's going to be really fun. My name is Liz Scott, and I have an accounting firm. I also have a consulting firm where I get to work with a lot of app developers. And it's a fun place to be able to cross over, because a lot of times what we're looking for in an app isn't quite there. And so what I get the opportunity to do is work with those app developers to tell them that product is almost exactly what we need, but some of the fine tuning, maybe there's some account mapping that we need, more customizable options. So those are some of the things that I get to do. I love writing. I love sharing with my community what it is that I've learned. I'm somebody who makes mistakes because I try a lot of different stuff. So I like to share what I've done and how I can hopefully help other people. So our agenda today is going to be talking about apps advisory services. So defining that, what exactly does it mean? And then what all is included in an app advisory service. So what kinds of offerings, and then subscription offerings. So this is something that is newer to a lot of people, is this subscription mindset about ongoing help whenever you implement apps. I'll tell you more about that as we move along. So whenever I'm thinking about apps advisory service, where I start pivoting and thinking about our clients is the way that we work is different. Many of us have got virtual environments, so really nothing's being stored on your computer. You're working inside of some type of shared drive. You're logging into communication tools like this, like Zoom or Teams. There's several of them out there. I know a lot of people even use Slack huddles. So those are all things that we're doing in order to collaborate with each other. Makes it super, super easy to be able to say, hey, I want to hop on and I want to troubleshoot if you're talking about a client. And clients are really comfortable with using Zoom now. Every once in a while, I'll fumble around in the first 5 minutes of a session and we'll kind of have a tech issue as we're trying to figure it out. But most of the time, people are off mute and probably have their video on, and then do like what I do. I call this wearing my upperwear. So casual down below, sweats, comfortable pants, and then professional shirts and appearance in the video. So it's a nice environment to be able to have the kind of workplace that you're able to grab lunch whenever you want to. A lot of employees are so thrilled to be able to come to work after they drop the kids off at school, or maybe they take care of parents. And so every once in a while during lunch, that's their lunch break. They go and check on family. So being able to be flexible is something that the accounting industry has had for a long time. But a lot of small businesses moved to that kind of thinking about 3 years ago. So that's been long enough that now they have embraced that move, and now they're looking for additional information, more tips. How should we work? What kind of security should we have in place? What kind of security should we have in place for our employees' computers? These are all conversations that start internally, because I think that that's a great place to start, is by experimenting yourself with what works in your own firm, and then passing on that kind of knowledge to your clients. Because same thing, you're going to learn things that work, and then you're going to learn some tricks that would help to enhance how that works, as well as what doesn't work. So, even the types of tools that you use to work with clients. Maybe like me, I used Zoom for a long time, and then I moved over to Teams. So that has all been a fun shift. I see a question, so I'm going to go and look at it. How do you get CPE for this session? Joel, I don't know the answer to that. I am going to tell you that would be something that our buds over at Insightful Accountant would be able to give you more details on. If you wanted to send them an email, you certainly could. But typically what will happen is CPE is sent to you via email, but you might want to go ahead and ask them that question. All right. Exploring opportunities. So whenever I think about the world of apps and consulting with them, this is an area that, oh my gosh, we have so many new apps. And there is such a wide variety in the types of apps that are out there. Everybody's got AI built into it. Everybody's jumping on the ChatGPT wagon and enhancing their apps. So it's a time period right now where it's worth looking at the apps that you've been using. Maybe you've been using those apps for years, but now they're incorporating some new features that could actually help you or help your clients. So it's time to really evaluate what your current stack is. Is it cutting edge? Do they have a roadmap of things that are coming out soon? Maybe you want to talk to them about security. What is their protocol for storing information? How is it stored? Those are the types of things whenever I'm thinking about apps, I want to vet them. I want to explore those opportunities. I want to think about how can I share this app maybe with a client. So would it be training them, implementing that app? Maybe it's going to be back office, so it's going to be internally we're going to deploy that app. So I need to think about how am I going to fit that new deployment into a timeline that's going to work for our firm. So there's definitely a lot going on right now that's going to affect the way that we work with our clients and the way that we interact with technology. I've got another question over here. What is ChatGPT? Okay, well, so I love that question, Kim. The ChatGPT is a chat bot, and what you're able to do is call up that app and you can type in basically anything. For example, if I wanted to pull up my ChatGPT and I wanted to ask it to write an email for me. I'm going to be out of office next week. And so I could do something, we could actually just even have fun with this. Let's see, if I wanted to pull up a chat GPT, here we go. So we'll just play with this for a moment. And I wanted to ask it to write a professional email for out of office. All right, so here we go. So Kim, here's to answer your question. So I can put into ChatGPT a thought, and it's going to, in this case, give me an email. Let's see, what is it doing? So thank you for reaching out. I'm currently out of office, dates, and will be unavailable. If your matter is urgent, please contact. Hey, that's great. So it's saying who is the next person in line, and they would be able to assist you. And then otherwise, whenever I return back, I will be able to catch up with you later. So these are the kinds of things that AI is doing, is you give it a little bit of information and then it's going to run with it and it's going to enhance that. So lots of people are using it for marketing, Kim. A lot of people are using it for, Hector Garcia in our QuickBooks community is dearly loved. And he's got a 3-part series where he's talking about kinds of questions that he's asking chatbots, and the kind of answers that it's coming back with are pretty darn great. So scenarios with QuickBooks, how to, what type of transaction, what would I do at year end, those kinds of questions. And it's coming back with some pretty good answers for sharing with clients. Let's see. Will the recording be available? Yes. Yes, so you will get the recording access after this webinar. I think it'll be either late this week or early next week. All right, so businesses of all kinds are looking for apps. One of the things that surprises me is whenever I look at my clients' QuickBooks files and just randomly go through what apps are connected, and they're connecting apps without me. And, that's the kind of thing that I want to stay ahead of. I want to make sure that I'm listening to what kinds of problems there are. So every once in a while, checking in with the clients and saying, how is it going? If you're using an app for calendar invites, what's your current situation? Maybe you can help them. Maybe they're wanting to make sure that their professional calendar is syncing with their personal calendars. Well, that's something that you can do in Acuity and then also in Calendly. I'm a Calendly user, so maybe you want to do something like set up where people are going to pay for appointments. These are things that you can incorporate in your firm, but then clients are also asking for these types of apps as well. They want to be able to have help with scheduling. They need help with invoicing. Maybe they have some type of complex AR scenario. And so they need a app that's going to be robust enough to maybe even handle some CRM tasks. So those are the kinds of things that I want to check in with my clients. And I want to just see, what are they doing? How are they doing it? Even talk about the apps that they do have that are connected. Are they meeting the needs that they have? Those are all valid questions. And I would say that your existing clients and even new clients, these are kinds of conversations that you want to explore with them. So apps advisory services, what this means is there's technology out there that our clients are finding, and they're connecting it to their environments. So whether that's QuickBooks, or it's their laptops or their phones, and it's not always the recommended apps. Maybe as an accounting professional, you would say, this is the app that I'm hearing the best information about. And that would be the app that you would recommend to the client. So those are the ways that you can help to guide your clients into being able to know what is a good app. One of the things I do often is I look at some of the Facebook groups. There's some really great ones out there that talk about apps, and we share our experience. What are some of the shortcomings of that app? Because that's really important. Sometimes it's okay because there's a workaround. The rest of the app is brilliant, and so you don't want to go in a different direction, but it's nice to be aware of where that app might have a shortcoming. The world of QuickBooks apps. There are now over 750 apps. That's a lot of apps. So when it comes to going to apps.com and you're looking at that database, just think about there is over 750 apps that are in that database now. That is overwhelming to a client. It's overwhelming even to us, and it's something that constantly takes some attention. And that's why those groups to be plugged into are really important. Asking your peers in your community for what kind of apps they're using and in particular scenarios. I'm looking at this group of apps right here. I see Expensify and Dex. You might want to ask a buddy, hey, which one of these do you use and why? Have you used the other one? And did you quit using it? Why? Those are the kinds of questions that whenever you're part of a community are safe to ask, and you're going to have more experience and knowledge base of people to pull from than these clients, because that's not the area that they focus. The reason why accountants are taking on this role of apps advisory is because we're the ones who are managing the QuickBooks files. We're the ones who are wanting to maintain the integrity of the accounting. So that means we want to really pay attention to what are we connecting, how is it working, is it working as expected, and monitor it. So that's where it comes into this project. So maybe you want to do a one-time project and you're going to be paid for that project, or it's something that you're going to be doing ongoing. And so that turns into reoccurring revenue. So here is an app stack. App stacks is a term that many are using, and it just means the group of apps that you're using in order to power your business. They do not have to talk to each other. This is not a requirement in an app stack. If you do want to have an app stack that does communicate, I would make sure that you understand the flow of information. Where is it going to? How is it getting there? Maybe in the case of bill, maybe you've got some type of fetching app that's going to gather those bills, and maybe that's what's going to be connected to your bill, formerly bill.com. And whenever those apps are imported into Bill, then they actually then are pushed over to QuickBooks. So that would be an example of a connected stack. Some people have got their email connected to QuickBooks, others don't. Kind of depends on, I know that there's a really cool Gmail integration for those who are using Google Calendar and they want to be able to invoice. You can actually take those scheduled events and make them visible inside of QuickBooks, so that way you could see who did you meet with, what did you meet about, what was the time frame, and then you can invoice off of it. So app stacking just means what's the tech that your firm or your client's company is using in order to empower that business. I've got a couple of questions. So I'm going to go over here and answer. What apps work with QuickBooks Desktop? So Alicia, that's a great question. Most of the people here are probably going to be working with QuickBooks, both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. Whenever I find an app that I really like and I'm curious, does it work with desktop as well? I'll go and search their knowledge base. So there are a lot of apps. In this case, Bill.com works with, I still call it Bill.com. Bill works with QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. So there's a lot of apps out there. With there being 750 plus apps, I think that the question would be, what kind of app are you looking for? And then going and researching, does it connect to desktop? Megan, you've got it. Hello, Megan. Megan was the winner of a really awesome shirt yesterday at Happy Hour. So MailChimp integrated with QuickBooks Online. It is not free. There is a discounted price. So the question is, MailChimp was purchased by Intuit, and there is a direct connection between MailChimp and QuickBooks. There's some cool stuff that's coming inside of that integration. Being able to monitor customer engagement, being able to monitor what kinds of things that they're purchasing, that's part of that reasoning for acquiring MailChimp. So that's a cool one to be paying attention to. And there are some premium apps that are out there, but those apps you're still going to need to pay for. So even though MailChimp has got a discounted price for people who are QuickBooks affiliated pro advisors, it is not free. So apps to create a solution. So the next thing I want to do is kind of move over into this mindset of helping a client. So we're going to be thinking about, as a firm who is offering apps advisory, what are the types of scenarios that we might run into? So why you might want an app is because QuickBooks Online has got those top bullets covered, but maybe somebody really wants to pull in an app for manufacturing. There is no such ability in QuickBooks Online alone to do any type of manufacturing. Sales emails, analytics, that's another one where there's a lot of robust reporting apps out there. I see a lot of people who want to have dashboards. They want to have interactive click areas to be able to find additional information, dig down. There's apps that are going to review your QuickBooks files. So that would be another one that would be firm based, but inventory, apps for payroll. So all of those might be apps that you would want to add on, because QuickBooks alone is a strong solution. But whenever you have a more robust need in a particular area, that's whenever you bring on an app. And when I'm listening to my clients, they know oftentimes what's available in QuickBooks and whether or not it's meeting their needs. And they're able to tell me why they need something more. So when you're thinking about your clients, streamlined workflows, that is one of the #1 reasons that I hear from somebody who wants to connect an app. The human errors, there is so much OCR ability out there that cuts down on the need to hand enter bill information. That's one of those areas that there's a lot of really cool apps out there. I think it's called Easy Bill. That's a super, super awesome app for anybody who receives a whole lot of bills and they don't want to hand enter it. They do a phenomenal job of being able to look at the bill, scrape off the data that's on there, and then present it in a way that is going to push over into QuickBooks. They are not a full service AP solution, so only their job is to read those bills. It's extraordinarily low cost. So if you're looking for something to help a client right away, that is a good one. Human errors, that's that piece where people they make mistakes. If it's going to affect the business because you added or subtracted a zero, that's a big mistake. And so needing to have some quality controls is one of the reasons to use an app. The increased productivity, I think it's important to cross-train on jobs. I think that it's difficult to cross-train whenever you don't have a documented approach. If nobody in the team knows how to do it except for the one person who stores it in their head, that is not going to help productivity if that person leaves, if that person gets ill, if that person goes on vacation. So that's why it's important to document, to cross-train, and then whenever I'm thinking about increased productivity, apps can help to move along tasks. So if I think about in our world, bank feeds inside of QuickBooks Online has changed the way that we enter transactions. There's still the need for clients who have invoicing and receive payments and bills and bill payments, but even those can be matched inside of the bank feeds. So it's a whole lot easier to be able to look at an account balance inside of QuickBooks and rely on that number because you're getting daily information. So the profitability, that's one of those that if you're more productive, if you're able to offer a more reliable service, then I would say that your productivity is going to go way up. If it's a scenario where you're pulling in an app that is going to answer phones, there's a lot of services out there that do that. It used to be all individual based, but there are apps that can do that. And that's going to be a way to make sure that even in out of office hours, that somebody is listening to those calls that are coming in. So providing apps advisory, how can it help your team? This is where I think about the efficiency in the firm and the skill set in the firm. I like to be able to test apps. And that means I have to have a team who's willing and trust me to go along with the deployment of that app. And sometimes the discontinuation of that app. But every single time that we implement an app, that is a skill that our team members are learning. They're learning new tech. They're learning new ways. Sometimes whenever you think about a problem from multiple different perspectives, you're able to even think outside the box of maybe that app, and it tells you, this is the workflow that we use, and that app has a different workflow. So let's go find an app that fits our workflow. And then you can start to explore apps that maybe have a synchronized order to the way that you work in your firm. And building the partnerships, I can say if you are somebody who's been working with app developers, they love to hear your input. They want to hear it. They know that the accountants and bookkeepers are the ones who are working with the clients and hearing the feedback. They're the ones working in the books. They're seeing the results. And so they're open ears whenever we come to them and we tell them what's working, what we're needing, what our clients are needing. And that builds a relationship. Some of the apps that I work with have got partner programs. Once you learn an app, they start to send over new clients to you. That happened just yesterday. I worked with an app 5 years ago. And yesterday they reached out and they said, we've got a client for you. And it was a great client. So it was an opportunity based on a relationship with an app developer years ago. So those are the kinds of opportunities that do happen whenever you're reaching out to these different developers. So the types of revenue that you can receive in your firm, I think about the project pricing. So anytime that you're going to be implementing a new app, that's going to have a fee associated with it. I'm going to share some of the steps that we use in order to recommend apps and deploy apps. So that way you kind of have an idea of the steps that we take. But each phase that we're going to go through has resources tied to it. So my team, myself, we're going to be busy trying to figure out a solution for that client. And that's going to take us away from other activity. There should be some compensation for that. One of the things that I really liked about the proposal app Ignition is they have got templates built into it. And I felt really uncomfortable the first couple of times whenever I was invoicing for apps advisory services. What made me feel braver was looking at Ignition's templates and seeing some of the prices that they had put next to these types of services that we provide. And I think at the time it had, anytime that you're implementing a new app, and it was basic level apps, $500. $500 is a pretty good chunk of change whenever you're thinking about maybe it's an app that you want to implement across all your clients. It's like, this is a really great solution. I want to teach all of my clients how to utilize it. So, you can think about the revenue that would come in with that type of work. The other thing is training and support. Our firm specializes in training. It's something that I enjoy looking at processes. I enjoy breaking it down so I can understand the parts and the pieces. And that's the way that I learn. And then once I learn it, I want to be able to take those parts and pieces and I want to be able to document it and share it. So that's the type of training that a lot of clients are looking for. Maybe they know that this is a really great app, but they're having a hard time with change management with their team. So they need somebody to help them move along that change management so that way they're successful with that app. A lot of times whenever I see a fail in an app, it's because they were never able to move forward. So that's a huge part of apps advisory, is being able to manage that deployment, keep it moving forward, whether it's you who's going to be training that team or your role is just to help the camaraderie of that team moving forward. That is an area that a lot of people don't have the additional time to invest. So as somebody who enjoys doing app advisory services, that's something that we know is built into our pricing. So we might have a project price that's going to include researching for that app. It's going to include implementing that app. And then we would also offer training and support. So with training, we would create a custom price. So it would be in addition to, in that case, a $500 implementing of an app is different than the training of that app. So there would be some additional team members that we might need to meet with. Maybe there's some field workers, maybe there's office workers, different departments in the office that are going to be interacting with that app. Those are the kinds of scenarios that we would want to make sure that all of the various people who are going to be interacting with that app have got training. And then the commissions and the preferred prices, that comes back to having those app relationships. There's a lot of support that can be offered in apps. And this is where the reoccurring dollars come in. When you implement apps, most of the time, there's going to be a need for some maintenance. Whether that means you're working with an inventory app, an e-commerce app, you want to be able to sync the data over into QuickBooks, so you're using something like A2X. Bookkeeping does a really nice job. There's several really good apps that act as that middleware to take all of that Shopify e-commerce activity or point of sale activity and then implementing that into QuickBooks. Those are going to be the types of apps that those need continual monitoring. There is something that needs to be done typically every month. The majority of the work is all done for us, but there might be something that happens where it's a penny off because there's a sales tax change, or there's a return and it was done in a way that team members don't normally do it. So, those are the kinds of things where it requires a human to be there to help keep the business moving forward, keep the data inside of QuickBooks up to date. I'm going to say this is the perfect time for our first poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. And this one is that. So you should be seeing this question. Have you ever considered offering apps advisory services to clients? While you're answering that question, come over here into chat. It looks like we're good there. And I'm watching the poll results, and I'm seeing a lot of you are saying that you're open to the idea, but you haven't done it yet. So I'm watching some of these others. Yes, that you're currently offering apps advisory services. So for those of you who say yes, want to do it, open to the idea, some of the things that we're going to be talking about next would be the phases of how you would work with those types of people. I'm going to count down the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So what's included in apps advisory services? Here is what we have learned in our firm. This is broken down into 4 different phases. If you wanted to add a 5th phase, I'll tell you what that 5th phase is in a minute. But the discovery phase is really important because you need to know what is needed. The research is based on what is needed, going out and finding it. The evaluation is all about, is it a good fit? And then the implementation of it is making sure that that app is connected to the company in whatever various ways that it needs to be. And then if, the 5th, I would say, would be that maintenance piece. So that ongoing piece of revenue. A key part of a successful apps advisory project would be to understand what is your role. So how are you going to be involved in this scenario? Is it that you are part of the overseer of that app, and so your job is to maybe do those first 3 parts that we were looking at? Maybe you're supposed to go and determine what's needed, look for that kind of app, evaluate that kind of app. But maybe actually implementing is not your role. Maybe that's going to be the app's responsibility. So when you're thinking about pricing, this is one of those key areas that I learned the hard way. I thought, well, it would be one price if we were going to do all 4 parts, and I didn't even think about charging for ongoing service. And so, I ended up in that kind of case, not being able to be compensated for the amount of work that was going into it. Those are learning experiences. I think that it's important to have learning experiences. So it's okay if you say to a client, hey, right now we're testing it, because there was actually about 40% of you that were saying that yes, that you wanted to implement apps but hadn't done it yet. So in that case, I would say, if you're starting out in this journey, tell your clients that. Say, I really want to help you with implementing an app. This is something our team wants to do, and would you be willing to go along with that with us? And we're not going to charge you what we probably would do it if we were really confident, but instead we're going to say, maybe we're going to do that at half price, or maybe we're going to do it at some type of discounted rate, whatever it is. But just understanding what is that role. And then with the project executor, that would be connecting that app, making sure that it's running smoothly, like what I was talking about in a Shopify e-commerce scenario. Those would be the kinds of things that when you're thinking about what are you supposed to be doing, it is all about communication with your client. Your client, most often, what I've learned in my experience, is they don't know what you offer. They don't know what they need. And so for you to be very clear about these various phases that you're going to be going through, what your role is in those various phases, not only gives them comfort because now you're in the driver's seat, you're taking charge of that project, but it also allows you and your team to know which phase are you in, what is expected of your team, when will success be met? Because if it's never defined, you will never know, and your client's never going to know if it was successful. So I definitely recommend making sure that you have a clear idea of where you're going, what you're doing. Timeline. This is another piece of it. Whenever I'm thinking about those different phases, I associate timelines with those. The reason that it's okay to spread out an app implementation over a course of 6 weeks is because it allows for that change management. It allows for the team to build confidence in what you're doing. It allows for you to continue doing your normal duties. Whenever you are trying to deploy this in a matter of a week, it's really hard to maintain a normal life, your normal workload, and anything that goes wrong. So in a perfect scenario, yay, you could do it in a week, awesome. But what about when things go wrong? You want to give yourself some leeway for that. You want to give yourself some time to be able to work with that client, build trust with that client. So it's okay. In fact, my clients, in my experience, they've liked it whenever I've said it's going to be a 6-week deployment. Here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be searching for the apps. We're going to be making backups of the QuickBooks file. We're going to meet with the vendors. We're going to now integrate the app because we like it. And then as soon as that app is integrated, we boom, straight hop over into team training. This also allows for you to share with your clients when you have success. So each of these bullets are success places to send out to your clients. That's encouragement to them. It's hard changing. So I make sure to communicate with my clients. We did it. Whatever it was that we were in that phase, we've accomplished it. Now we're going to move on to the next thing. We had success here. So now they're building confidence in your ability. You're gaining some confidence yourself and even your team. And then you're able to move to the next phase. I have a couple of questions. Let me go look at those. So Ramona, I love your question. So what Ramona's question is many of us, the issue is being knowledgeable enough with the apps to feel comfortable recommending and following through. So Ramona, your question, you're right. It is something that the majority of us struggle with. That is why I think it's important whenever we go through the discovery phase to go into it not thinking that we have all of the answers. It's truly okay whenever you are looking at a new app, new industry, new category to not have all of the answers. That is part of being in those groups that you can ask those types of questions. It's part of having the app demos. So let's see. I'm going to show you, here's what we do in the discovery phase. So what we do is we want to evaluate what is the team doing, what are the different points of contact, who's doing it. And let me show you, here's an example. You can do this with sticky notes. You can do this with, there's several different tools out there that you can map out flows like this. But what you do first is you would be able to say, in this scenario, we're talking about field service. So a call comes in. They need to be able to create an offer or decline the job, and it stops. If they accept the job, the client, then they need to be able to create a work order for the team. Then they need to create a schedule. The team is picked. The team goes out and completes the work. And then the invoice is created. And most of the time, I'm going to say you want to be able to receive payment while out in the field, or you can invoice for a later date. But this would be the scenario where I was talking about the discovery. So I don't know which app to go and get. So that's why it's okay that you don't know all of the apps, because you really need to know what is their scenario. And like one of my good friends likes to say, everybody likes to feel like they're unique. So if you go through and you listen to the team members, how they work, what they're needing, That's going to help you to gather that information and allow them to believe that you're listening to their uniqueness. And that's where I'm able to come in and say, okay, I've got some bottlenecks that I'm identifying. In the case of the field service management, maybe what they were feeling is the invoicing responsibility. They don't want their crew to do that out in the field. They want, they don't want their crew in the office to do that. They want their crew out in the field to do that, because that's going to make receiving payments a whole lot easier. Cash flow is going to be better. And so they're going to want an app that would allow them, when performing field services, to collect payment while they're out in the field. The other thing that we heard was scheduling. So they want to be able to schedule jobs. Maybe what they've been doing for a while is they've been using some type of, and I've seen this, so this is real world, Google Calendar. And every individual team member was a different color on that calendar. And so they were supposed to go and check the calendar regularly to be able to see, did they have a new color for their name added to their calendar? And that was the way that they were to know if they had a new activity. That's not very effective. So instead, maybe what this company is looking for is a scheduling app that's going to allow text to be sent out to the team members. It's going to tell them where do they need to be in the morning, where are they going that day, tracking their time while they're performing those duties. Instead of doing it in a separate app, keep it all in one app. Missed opportunities. So instead of their office team being bogged down with invoicing, now the team is invoicing out in the field, and so they're able to do a better job of answering the phones. So they're not missing some of those calls. This is kind of a scenario. So define the objectives. Next thing I would do is I would ask the client, what must they have? So what do they need in order for them to say this was a success? And this is where, Miriam, it's okay that you don't know all of the apps, because you're listening and you're gathering data, because you're going to use that data to then go find some possible solutions. And so the next part would be the research. I would think about, what are the different apps that are out there? How are they talking to QuickBooks? In the case that I was just talking about, so would you want the customer names to be created in QuickBooks? Or would you rather the customer names be created in that scheduling app that you're talking about for field service management? And then in that case, if you wanted the data to be able to flow back and forth, then you would want an app that would be able to interact with QuickBooks that way. So all apps are going to interact with QuickBooks by either creating, reading, updating, or deleting. So you want to know, what do those various apps do, and does it meet the needs? Because if your client's telling you that sometimes the customers get updated in QuickBooks and there's not a bi-directional sync, so now your field service management app won't get updated, and that's a problem, maybe then it would be a stop, because that would be a must-have, and now you need to go and look for a different solution. I go and search for apps on apps.com. What I do is I use these categories. So I will start by searching some of these different categories. The other thing that I'll do is I'll search keywords. So I'll go up there and I'll plug in maybe field service management apps, and it'll pull it up. And then I can say accounts receivable, manage workforce. Those are the kinds of things that I would plug in order to find different apps. Here's an example of an app that was located. So Jobbers was picked because it does all of the various things that the client is looking for. And I would say I would find 2 others. So I would present to the client 3 different options, which is why it's okay that you don't know it all, because the client is going to be part of that selection with you. This is a great time for our next poll. So I'm going to launch our next poll. And you should see that. What are the ways in which an app can interact with QuickBooks? Ooh, lots of people answering that one really fast. Yay. All right, I'll leave it up for about 45 more seconds. Now I would say just about all of you are answering the correct answer. And I will give us another 10 seconds here. While I'm doing that, let me look at, so Terry, I hear you. I mean, you're saying, hey, I agree with Ramona that it's difficult to know which apps to pick, but that's why it's great to go and search for different apps with keywords. And then what I do is I'll go and I'll look at their websites and I'll search with my friends in different social groups. I'll ask them about those apps. Okay, I'm going to count us down. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So create, update, read, and delete. A. That was your correct answer. Evaluation. So this is where I was talking about those 3 different apps. I bring my clients to those demos. I might do a demo myself if I feel really uncomfortable and I want to spend some time making sure that I've made the right choice in presenting it to the client. This is a paid service. So if you want to first do a demo, I recommend that. Otherwise, I would say bring these 3 different choices to your client and say, I really want you to participate in the selection. Remember, your role is to keep the implementation of the app moving forward. So your role here would be to make sure that the company is showing up to these demos. What I have found is while those different companies are sitting in on these demos, they think about other things that they didn't initially tell me in their needs. So they're watching these different apps. Sometimes they like the colors of it. Sometimes they like the way that you interact with it. Sometimes they look at it and they're like, oh, my brain, understands the logic of this app. And so, that's how an app is selected because of some of the things that are features that they really like about it. But there is an app evaluation worksheet. This was designed by Heather Satterley, one of my really good friends, and it's a way to score apps. So what you can do is you can put in here the various different names of the apps. So I would say put in app number 1. So maybe in that case would be Jobbers. Put in app number 2, and then put in app number 3. Do your demos or look on the websites. Determine yes or no. Does it meet those requirements? What were some of those nice to haves? Forecasting, that's a nice to have. Ease of use, that's a nice to have. So this is a really solid way to take some evidence back to your team to say, is this a fit? Or do I have 2 that do not work? They don't meet the must-haves. So now the team needs to go and find, or I need to go and find a different app. So this is a way to be able to document. I refer to these later. So maybe you have a client that's going to have a similar need. You've already done an app evaluation before on that app. You can pull this up and you can use this information. This is also handy for taking back to the client and saying, yeah, I know you really liked the way that it looked, but remember, it doesn't have some of these must-haves. And there is a scoring that happens. So like in this case, if it met all of the requirements for the must-have, you would get a point system of 60 points, and then so on and so on till you get to the very end of this worksheet. And there's this bit.ly link here, so that way everybody has access to it. But that is something that you can take to the client and you can show them. So whenever I'm thinking about those must-haves, this is the way that I score them. And then with the client, I present the findings. And that way we are determining what is the best solution together. That does not take away from your expertise. It doesn't take away from the value that you bring to this implementation. It doesn't affect their opinion of you that you're giving them choices. When I think about consultants, that is all about advice. That's all about bringing choices. You are showing an advisory, you are showing them all the various options to help them determine what they should do. That you might have your favorites, and so you can make those recommendations, but that's why take some of the scary out that you don't know all of those apps, because you're making that decision together. And one of the things that I found is while they're learning, where they're in the demos, they're learning that app. So whenever we start to do this next phase of implementation, they don't feel as overwhelmed like it's brand new. If you bring to them an app and you're like, I've chosen the best app out there and now we're going to implement, it feels very foreign. So that's why that timeline of phases is really strong approach to be able to implement, because you create buy-in, you create some ownership of that app. So next you would integrate that app. You would either go through your QBOA or apps.com, either way to implement that app. There's some different things that can happen whenever you're thinking about setup. Some of those apps that are larger, they're going to have a setup team, and maybe it's going to be a paid setup service. That still is something that doesn't take away from the value that you're bringing to the table. Remember, most apps fail because they never get fully implemented. So if you are there driving this momentum, that is success whenever you're moving through each one of these phases. And here's where I start talking about this ongoing reoccurring revenue. It's the maintenance of these apps. It's the maintaining those connections. It's the troubleshooting. It's identifying when things go wrong. It's understanding their system, because you've done that, your due diligence and the discovery. And so you understand the nuances of their business. Plus you did the demo. And even whenever I have an app that's going to implement, I still attend those implementation meetings. I want to be part of it. One of the things that happens during the implementation, you are the accountant, bookkeeper expert. You are the QuickBooks guardian. And so your role is to say, ooh, that doesn't smell right. That doesn't look like what we're expecting it to do. Roadblock. So that is your role. So it's okay whenever you're working with an app and you're implementing it and you're doing all of the training, that helps you in this the troubleshooting phase, because you're going to know when something goes wrong and what to do. Training, this is something that maybe you're going to provide internally. Maybe it's going to be something that there's videos on the website. Maybe it's like Calendly, it's kind of easy. There's really some basic steps to it. So some videos, but then again, you know, they might run into, how do I sync various calendars? How do I get paid through Calendly? So those would be the kinds of things that maybe you would want to offer some training. And then building your offerings. So here's an example of a engagement where not only was there a project price for the discovery, the evaluation, and the implementation of that app and the training of that app, but then also ongoing. So depending on what app it is that you're implementing, that would affect your subscription price. But a lot of firms have moved to this idea of subscription prices. So whether it's $20 a month, whether it's $200 a month, whatever it is, you know, you're going to be able to evaluate what is the level of difficulty to maintain that app. And maybe that's another thing where you're talking to your peers. Apps get updates. It happens. And when those updates happen, it's really nice to be able to know what are the steps that you need to take in order to fix it. So if you're in an industry that is a niche, that's going to be kind of easy for you, because maybe in the case of the field service workers, maybe you've got jobbers on 15 of your clients. Well, you know the fix for it. So you're able to say, okay, there was an update, here comes the fix, and I'm going to show the new team or the team what's the new process. Maybe the app changed a bit. You know, whatever it is, you're able to be in that role of expertise that's part of the subscription. All right, so let's do our poll. And Leslie, you're welcome. I'm glad that that worksheet helps. Poll, launch it. What should you do if an app, what should you do if an app doesn't provide all the must-have features and functions that a client needs? And this speaks to, your confidence level in recommending apps. You are not pointing and saying, this is the must-have app. You are instead saying, this is the app that I found, as well as these other ones that fit your needs. And we're going to evaluate together by doing demos, by looking at all of the features, going through that app worksheets, the evaluation worksheet. Okay, I'm going to count us down. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Ooh, I see somebody jumped in right there last minute. Okay. All right, in poll. I have enjoyed spending time with you today. I hope that this has given you a level of confidence that you don't have to know all of the solutions. It's okay to come into app advisory a little bit green. I can say I love implementing apps. I don't know 750 apps. I never will. And each time that I think I've got a handle on the apps that are available, more are added, and they're awesome apps. So what happens is these apps go through this really rigorous process, and once they meet that standard, then they're able to be in apps.com. And so there's lots of great apps that are out there that haven't made it to apps.com yet. So, when apps are added, that's a really cool thing. Sometimes you can go and look in apps.com for the new apps. But, it's okay to ask your peers. It's okay to say to the client, let's check these out together. You are still in charge of that engagement. You're still moving it forward. And that's valuable. If you think about all the times that maybe you've wanted help hand-holding during an implementation process, that's what you're doing. So that advisory piece is something that a lot of firms are moving towards. Whether you're offering it in a small dose, maybe it's just adding Calendly, or you're doing manufacturing. Either way, there are all kinds of consulting firms that specialize in app advisory or just add apps from time to time. It's a really cool world, and I appreciate you being here today. Thank you, everyone.